If you care about the kind of agricultural knowledge that kept people alive long before pumps, hoses, or irrigation timers, subscribe now, because this channel exists to test historical systems under real conditions. What you're about to hear isn't a novelty trick or a clever modern workaround. It is a 1,000-year-old rainwater method that quietly took over my watering schedule. And, well, it did so using physics and soil biology that medieval farmers understood better than we do today. Why ancient farmers treated rain as something to slow down, not collect. Modern rainwater harvesting is obsessed with capture and storage, barrels, tanks and calculations. Ancient systems were different. They focused on infiltration, movement and timing. Instead of asking how much water they could store, they asked how long they could keep rain in the soil after it fell. This mindset produced systems that watered crops days or even weeks after the last rainfall, without human involvement. What the 1,000-year-old rainwater hack actually is and where it comes from. The system is a buried clay seepage network, often associated with ancient Mediterranean, Middle Eastern and Asian agriculture. The most basic form uses unglazed clay vessels or channels buried near plant roots. Rainwater enters the soil normally, but instead of draining away, it is pulled into porous clay and released slowly back into the surrounding earth. The soil, not the gardener, decides when water is needed. This is not irrigation in the modern sense. It is regulated leakage. Why this method made my garden start watering itself. Once installed, the clay acted as a moisture buffer. During rainfall, it absorbed excess water. During dry periods, it released that stored moisture gradually, driven by soil tension and root demand. Plants drew water only when they needed it. I stopped guessing when to water because the system responded automatically. Even during hot spells, the soil stayed evenly moist below the surface while the top remained dry, discouraging weeds. When we look at historical sources, they often describe the use of this method without, well, any modern terminology. Ancient texts, you see, rarely explain the underlying science, but they do describe the results quite clearly. Crops managed to survive droughts that frankly wiped out neighbouring fields, and interestingly enough, gardens required much less labour. Water was conserved, and rather impressively, this was achieved without any need for rationing. Archaeological finds, such as buried ollas, clay pipes and porous amphorae, really confirm that this was not just some experimental idea. It was, in fact, standardized knowledge, passed down through practice rather than written manuals. Now, let's talk about how you can apply this method today, using, well, just some simple materials. To replicate the system, you'll want to use unglazed terracotta pots or those purpose-made clay ollas. Bury them near the root zone of your plants, leaving only the opening exposed. It's as straightforward as that. Fill them with rainwater and cover the opening to reduce evaporation. As the surrounding soil dries, water seeps through the clay walls. When the soil is moist, seepage slows automatically. For larger areas, clay drain tiles or porous ceramic pipes can be laid shallowly along planting rows to achieve the same effect. Why soil structure matters more than container size. This method works best in soils that allow lateral moisture movement. Heavy clay benefits because the system prevents surface pooling while maintaining deep moisture. Sandy soils benefit because the clay acts as a localized reservoir. Adding organic matter around the buried clay improves efficiency by encouraging fungal networks that distribute moisture further. Ancient farmers often paired this system with mulching, not as a separate practice, but as a reinforcement. So, why did this method outperform drip irrigation in my test? Well, drip irrigation delivers water on a schedule, whether plants actually need it or not. The clay seepage system, on the other hand, responds to the actual soil conditions. Water use dropped dramatically, because really nothing evaporated on the surface. Roots grew deeper and stronger, trained by consistent subsurface moisture rather than shallow surface watering. The plants became more resilient, not dependent. Now, why did modern gardening abandon this system despite its effectiveness? The answer, quite simply, is speed and scale. Buried clay systems take time to install, and honestly, they do not fit mechanized farming easily. Plastic hoses were faster, cheaper up front, and just easier to standardize. But in the end, convenience replaced resilience. In a world facing water scarcity and energy instability, the old method suddenly makes sense again. That's why, survivalists and serious growers really should pay attention. This system requires no electricity, no pressure, and no ongoing inputs. Once installed, it lasts for years. Even if water access becomes limited, rainfall alone can keep crops alive far longer than surface irrigation ever could. This is not backup technology. It is primary infrastructure disguised as simplicity. So, how to know it's working without instruments? Historical farmers judge success by soil feel and plant behavior. Leaves stayed firm through midday heat. Soil beneath the surface stayed cool. Growth was steady, not explosive. These signs, honestly, still apply. If you stop worrying about watering and start noticing consistency instead, the system is doing its job. If preserving real agricultural knowledge matters to you, subscribe to the channel and share this with others who believe history still has something to teach us. These systems fed people for centuries, and keeping them alive today is not nostalgia, it's preparedness.